And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network covering IU women's basketball. I'm your host tonight, Kathy Amos, and tonight I am joined by our special guest and friend from Assembly Call, Andy Bottoms. And this evening we are discussing our number 2 ranked Hoosiers over number 5 Iowa's win, 78-87. This win takes our women's record now to 23-1 overall, 13-1 in the conference, and it puts us solely in first possession of first place in the Big Ten Conference. It's a huge, momentous win for our women's program for a lot of reasons, but now it solely puts our women in the driver's seat of their own destiny for the rest of February as they march continually towards that Big Ten title. But let's start our show the way we start every show, and with that's our banner moment tonight. And Andy, for me, I'm actually going to go to our fourth quarter here. It's about 7:12 left to go, and Garzon came in. She had 4 fouls. There's been a lot of foul trouble, which I'm sure we'll get into, but they trusted Garzon to come in. She hadn't scored all night, and they hit her on the corner there for her first bucket of the game, which was a 3-pointer. We go down to the other end to play some defense. We get the ball back from Iowa. Grace comes down, and as she had been doing all of the second half, she drives the ball, but actually gets fouled this time. She goes to the line and makes both of those free throws, and it puts Indiana up by 7 with a 72-79 lead. And we just never really, 62-69 lead. And to me, this was the largest lead at that point in the game. And I felt like that was a real turning point for our team, because I don't think we ever really looked back. And then obviously finishing with a 9-point lead, but we had gotten into double digits later as well. But I thought that was a really momentous sequence of events for our team that ended up forcing Iowa to take a timeout as well. And it just really showed the trust that I thought the coaching staff had in Garzon as a freshman to put her back in, and she really delivered. That was her first bucket. She ended up with 8 on the game. And overall, I just thought that was such a pivotal point. I picked that as my banner moment. I think we had several to pick from, but that's the one I'm going with. And as always, our banner moment tonight is sponsored by Home Field Apparel. Home Field Apparel is constantly releasing new items, new schools. In fact, they just released a hat for Indiana. So for those of you who might be a fan of the IU Oval, you can go out and get it on your hat now as well. But they're refreshing other schools as well. And if you like our gear, other gear, even no college gears at all, you can go out and probably find something on Home Field Apparel. Go to homefieldapparel.com and you can use our promo code HOME, HOME, to get 15% off of your entire first order. Again, that website is homefieldapparel.com and the promo code is HOME, HOME. Wear one for the team. All right. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Andy for Andy's analysis. So, Andy, what's your initial thoughts on tonight's win over Iowa?
I mean, just a great game between two really, really good college basketball teams. Tied after the first quarter, tied at halftime. Was a 1-point game late in the third quarter before IU scored the last 4 points to go up 5 heading into the fourth. And then IU really pulled away at that point. That run that you mentioned was the one that I really marked down as well. Iowa would come back to tie it. IU starts the fourth quarter with that 5-point lead. They let Iowa come back to tie it. And then, as always, this team is just unflappable and ripped off 7 points in a row. I think at that point, nobody had been up by more than 6, and been a really back and forth game. And I think that was that was the last of the 14 lead changes and the 11 ties that were in this game. I mean, just to speak to how even it was. So just a really strong performance down the stretch from this team, what they've come to expect. And it was in large part all about Grace Berger and McKenzie Holmes, who we'll talk about a ton. I thought Grace just completely controlled the game, really got it played at IU's pace. They ran when they wanted to run. They pulled it back when they didn't. And after a pretty frenetic start, I think the game was played a little bit more like IU wanted to play it as the game went on, and they got some timely contributions from other people. You mentioned Garzone in the fourth quarter. Sarah Scalia was that in the first half when she scored all 8 of her points then. So other people stepped in to pick things up. Chloe Moore McNeil had a good game, but yeah, it was a lot of Grace and a lot of McKenzie, and they both did awesome tonight. And just a fun college basketball game that you can kind of enjoy a little bit more when when your team wins eventually. In the moment, a little tense. It's that tight the entire game, but it actually seemed like it kind of flew by just because it was such a well played game, and just a great performance from IU.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, Andy. Noah, we were texting during the game, and I told you, I'm like, I got to go take some emotional laps. So I was definitely pacing.
I've never heard the term emotional laps, but I think if I had, it's definitely a term I would have used at various points in the past.
Yes, well, feel free to take that. I can't say I coined it either. I got it from a Peloton instructor, actually, but yeah. So I took some emotional laps in this, especially in that fourth quarter, to get me through. And I also told my husband, I said, it's really good. I can talk this out with Andy right now, because I don't think that I'm going to be able to get to bed when I need to go to bed. So thanks for coming here. And yes, you mentioned Grace and McKenzie, and this definitely some of the things we've come to expect is the leadership, the maturity, and the poise, especially from them, but for the team in general. Let's go ahead and jump about some of the other to be as expected from our team. So Andy, is there anything in particular you want to jump on and add on to besides what we just started talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a game like this, you got to have your stars play as expected, and so I think with McKenzie and with Grace, that was such a big factor. I think Grace early on missed a jump shot right in the mid-range where she loves to get the ball, and but was able to get to the rim pretty much whenever she wanted, it felt like. And so I thought she did a good job of shooting pull-ups when she could, trying to get to the basket. I know she was frustrated not getting some foul calls here and there. I commented on Twitter that if she got half the respect that Caitlin Clark got from the officials, she would have been at the free throw line a few more times. But just really thought she controlled the tempo of the game incredibly well for IU, and got IU into sets when they needed to, but also one of the baskets they got toward the end of the third quarter that put them up 5, I think she kind of rushed it up the court, took a pull-up jumper from about 18 feet and just drained it. She just has such a good sense of the game and when to go and when not to. So I think those are the kinds of performances you expect from her. Maybe not so much, I think she almost got her career high, which was 29. So she ended up with 26 tonight. But I thought just a really solid game from her. And those are the kinds of, you got to count on players like that in a huge game like this. And so she stepped up in a big way there. And that was as expected for me.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely well said. I think for me, I'm going to talk about our defense now. Outside of Caitlin Clark, Caitlin Clark's going to get her points. I think very few teams have held her very much under 30. So 35 points for Caitlin Clark. But what I want to talk about is maybe as a whole, the team. We held Iowa to 10 points under their season average. They averaged as a team almost 90 points, 88. And in particular, I want to talk about Monica Sinanu. Sinanu averages is second behind Caitlin Clark, and anyone would love her as the first high scorer. She averages around 18 points a game, and we held Monica Sinanu to 6 points. Now, I understand part of that was fouling. She had gotten into some foul trouble and had to sit quite a bit, but even in the first half, she only had 2 looks at the goal. So held her to 4 points in the first half, 2 more in the second. I thought that our defense on Monica Sinanu when she was in there was really just superb. And to be honest, I thought Chloe did a fine job on Caitlin Clark. It's just, as much as it pains, Caitlin Clark is a phenomenal basketball player. And she can just hit so many shots that even contested, just seemed to really go in for her. And it helped that she, had 8 of 11 from the free throw line as well. So that to me though is expected though, as a team. I thought our defense was really, again, pretty much on point. But what were your thoughts on defense tonight, Andy?
Yeah, I think Zanano's been a player that's given IU fits in the past, and so to be able to hold her in check was really important. And the foul trouble helped with that, but that was also part of the concerted effort from IU to go at her and try to get her in a little bit of foul trouble. It was funny, they really came out in the in the beginning of the second half really tried to go at her a couple times and didn't get fouls called. And then, ironically enough, she ends up getting her third, not playing defense, but going after a rebound when McKenzie had blocked her out. So, that was a big foul. It really kept them a little bit off balance, made them more perimeter oriented. And as far as Clark goes, you look at the final stat line, she got 35 points, but she needed 28 field goal attempts and 11 free throws to get there.
Yeah, she had to work hard for those 35
100%. I thought Chloe really made things tough on her. And I thought in the first half, they were, and to her credit, she was willing to give up the ball at times in the first half. I think she had 7 assists at halftime. Ended with 10 on the game. And I thought in the second quarter, I wrote down the people who IU wants to take shots are taking shots right now. And if they make them, they make them. But, and she was a little bit more assertive in the second half. And I think in general, IU forced Iowa to go more one-on-one. They had, trying to look back, I think they had 12 assists at halftime and they only ended up with 17 for the game. And so that was one of the things that was really hurting IU early on was their ability to find open people and convert. And IU made them a little bit more isolation focused in the second half. And while Clark's going to get hers doing that, thought they largely took other people away. And you give up 78 points. It's kind of funny, like you say, to say, wow, that's a really strong defensive effort, but it really was. And you hold somebody to 35 points, and it's like my family was gone for part of the game, and they got home, and they were like, well, how are they doing against Caitlin Clark? And I was like, I don't think she had 30 yet. And I looked, and she did have 30, but I was like, man, it really feels like they've done a good job. So
right. Was it quiet 35? Can we say that? Not really.
Yeah,
nothing quiet about Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing that was as expected, and I think this is maybe a surprise to people that don't watch a lot of IU basketball, is on the flip side of it was, how we scored 87 points. I don't think people think of us as this high-powered offense, especially if they've watched us the past couple of years. We've not been strong offensively, but, we average as a team right around 80 points or so. And so we were actually above our average. Again, some of that was Iowa's fouling in the last couple of minutes to try to slow the game down and extend it. But, I thought that's again a testament because, we weren't having the best of night in terms of everybody clicking. We had some foul trouble of our own with Garzon and Parrish, who both were sitting out quite a bit the whole game and ended up fouling out. But, even Chloe, she struggled 1 for 8. But the thing that I thought was great was they really had a good game plan to drive the ball and try to get to the line, which we definitely did. As much as, we're talking about Caitlin Clark getting the line, she was, 11 of their 23. Well, we made 22 free throws. So we almost made as many as they took. So I thought that was, again, something that is, kind of coming to be expected from this team is really kind of our offensive prowess as well, which is, again, something kind of new to this team we're not used to.
Yeah, it's funny. Like you said, you look up, you score 87 points. Some of that's the pace that Iowa wants to play at. But at the same time, you get 87 points when you don't get a ton of minutes from Sydney Parrish. You don't get a ton of minutes from Garzone. And Scalia scored a lot of her points pretty quickly in the first half, which was a huge lift, but didn't get a lot from her. So you just and I think Chloe ended up with almost all her points from the free throw line. So I think you look at that and you didn't necessarily feel like you were firing on all cylinders, but they found ways to get points. Didn't have a lot of second chance points, but I thought were really aggressive at trying to drive the ball to the basket. That earned them trips to the free throw line and got outscored in the paint, but overall we're still pretty aggressive in that regard and shot the ball well from 3, which is enough to open up driving lanes at 7 of 14. On threes, they made more than Iowa and took 9 less from 3, which is really what Iowa wants. Right. And one other thing, not to get into stats too early, but you look at fast break points. Iowa only outscored IU 21-20. So if you think about where IU is going to score points in a game that the opponent wants to play at a fast pace, they were able to take advantage of those, but they really didn't get lit up in that area of the game like Iowa wants to do to the people that it's playing. And I thought that really kept Iowa from getting any sustained momentum in the game at all.
Yeah. So anything else you want to touch on in terms of what as expected, or do you want to jump over and talk about maybe some things that surprised you that you didn't expect to see tonight?
I think we jump to the surprises. I think we hit the big ones.
Yep. All right. You want to kick us off or, um,
Yeah, I can hop in. One of
yeah.
those was the turnovers. They talked about this on
Yep.
the broadcast. Iowa averaged 14 turnovers a game, and ended up with 18 in this game from IU, and really a lot of those came early. There weren't,
Yeah.
I think
7
they
in the
had,
first quarter. Yeah.
yeah, 12 at halftime, so they only had 6 in the second half. But really thought that helped IU in some ways. In the first half, it helped them navigate having Parrish and Garzone in foul trouble, that you took some possessions away from Iowa by being able to get steals when you had a
Yep.
couple nights, you had a couple of your better players sitting on the bench a lot in the half. So again, I think a testament to IU's defense. They were able to frazzle Iowa a little bit, whether that was through ball pressure from Chloe, people getting in passing lanes. I just thought that rattled Iowa a little bit, and that's an area where, in a team that's really explosive, if you can manage to turn them over just a few extra possessions and take those possessions away from them, that it certainly helps a lot. So that was probably the biggest one for me in that category.
Yeah. Great. One of the surprises for me was actually the amount of fouling. I know it was a really fast paced and obviously super physical game, but I've been watching a lot of college women's basketball, and they don't necessarily always call that. And, we had 2 of our players foul out, and then McKenzie Holmes with 4. And then you had Sonano on Iowa with fouling out, and 3 of their players with 4. And I was just surprised at the fouling, and it just didn't seem consistent either. Although that's not a surprise. I'm just surprised that they
It never
called
is.
so many. It seemed like, yeah, it was just, I was just surprised in general at our fouling too, because just concentrating on what our team can control. Again, you can't control the referees and what they call or don't call. But historically, at least this year, we've been one of the least fouling teams in the Big Ten. I said that very poorly, but we fouled the least of most of the Big Ten teams. So that's something, that Coach Morin really prides the team with, and helps talk about that and staying disciplined and not fouling. So I actually was really surprised at how many fouls we got whistled for in this game in particular, especially, Sydney Parrish. Garzon, that's been kind of an issue for her all year, but Sydney Parrish can kind of get into it. But McKenzie Holmes doesn't generally foul that much. So I was surprised at all of the fouling, but without critical of the referees, we don't need to talk about them. I think we all know.
I mean,
do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just thought it was it was a little bit. Oh, if you're still,
Yep.
Sorry, I think I'm still there.
It's
My
okay.
computer setup here is kind of flashing all over the place here. I just thought some of the fouls were. I thought some of the things that got called made very little sense compared to some of the things that didn't.
Yes. Thank you.
And
That's a good way to say it.
I thought there were a few like phantom calls, and I know Clark definitely got the benefit of the doubt going to the basket in some cases. And I think, even on Parrish's 4th foul, she got beat on the inbound. She really tried to grab her before she even shot. So she probably did foul. I don't think she fouled her on the shot, but
Right.
Some of those things. And McKenzie picked up 2 real quick ones in the in the third quarter. Parrish got one on a moving screen. Just kind of odd things to get called for, and not as much of doing stuff on the ball. Garzone, I think it was her second that I think I just wrote down Terry Morin is pissed in my notes. She just like hip checked somebody coming across. It's like, you can't, maybe that was her third. I don't remember which one it was, but it was like, yeah, that's a foul. You're not getting away with that one. So,
Right.
I thought they missed stuff on both sides. I thought one of the fouls that they did call on Grace Berger inside was probably the least contact that there was. My favorite was the late whistle where girl shoots it, ball goes over the basket, somebody rebounds it, and I think it even like taken a dribble, and then they called the foul on that. But 44 fouls. Sometimes I like to turn over to watch the women's game so that they're not officiated like a street fight. And this was not quite the refreshment that I was looking for in that.
Right.
In those terms, but they managed to navigate it. I thought they did a good job of managing the rotation and keeping them out there for the most part, and having to roll the dice a few times, and it worked more often than not in terms of being able to at least get themselves through toward the end of the game to be able to survive.
Yeah, and this might be a good time to talk a little bit about Sarah Scalia. So that ended up with, Sarah having to play 32 minutes off the bench, which, again, for her, she's also started several games. She started at Minnesota. 32 minutes isn't too bad, but she came in, and I thought in that first half at least, and gave us some really key moments, right? Like she had 8 points, two for four from 3-point line, and hit both of her free throws, because that was one of the other surprises for me as a team. Was just our free throw shooting in general. We normally shoot around 77%, and tonight we shot 64% as a team. But Sarah didn't seem to be bothered by that. She came in and nailed both of those. And I thought that first half for Sarah was a very solid half, both offensively and defensively. But what are kind of your thoughts on Sarah coming in off of the bench?
Yeah, she hit one of the bigger shots. It feels like a long time ago, I guess, because it was. But IU took a timeout down 13-7 in the first half after giving up a 13-2 run. And coming out of the timeout, she hit a big three after that and really steadied things a little bit, got it back to the 3-point game. Obviously, you're not going to lose the game in the first quarter in that scenario, but just one to give them back a little bit of momentum, get the crowd back into it. It was off a nice pass from Chloe Moore McNeil. And so, they navigated things there, got it back to a close game. And then Sydney Parrish ended up hitting a three and tied it at 15, which kind of got IU right back in it. And so I thought her being able to step in those scenarios was huge. She didn't score in the second half. I don't think she took too many shots, though, to be honest with you.
I don't either. No.
But she was one that really was aggressive in transition. She missed a layup that she probably wishes she had back at one point in the first half, but came out and was aggressive. And on a night when you needed other people to be able to step up and score a little bit to provide another threat out there, she did a really good job of that, and was a big spark in the first half. And then, kind of like we talked about earlier, Garzone was pretty much the same thing in the fourth quarter, hadn't scored at all, and got 8 big points there in a row. So just kind of getting those lifts from different people on this team has been a hallmark of their play all season.
Right. Yeah. There were a lot of kind of fun plays like that. I thought McKenzie had one. What was it? In the first quarter? Yeah, it was towards the end of the first quarter where they were trying to get the ball down to Sinanu, and Sinanu was really posting her up and really backing into her, and so they started to throw the ball in, and McKenzie just backed off of her, and Sinano just fell down. And I thought it was funny. My husband looks at me and goes, "Oh, she pulled the chair out." And about 2 seconds later, the announcer said the same thing. And I'm like, that's just fun. I enjoyed seeing that. And so there were a lot of fun moments like that into this game. So it definitely did not disappoint. That was definitely not a surprise. But how about, before we jump inside the numbers, Andy, any other expectation or surprises that are left in your notes you want to bring up?
I didn't really see any that I had. I'm just kind of looking down the score sheet. I think, Chloe only going 1 for 8 from the field is a bit of a surprise, but she expended so much energy defensively on Caitlin Clark that maybe that makes it a little bit less of a surprise. With her, though, you talked about leaving some points at the free throw line potentially. She definitely was not one that did that. In both halves, stepped up and made all of her free throws. She was 8 for 8 from there for the night. So I think her overall shooting suffered, but I think it suffered for a good reason, and that was her really putting in so much effort on the defensive end, and still was able to come up, had 3 assists, and 9 rebounds. So it was not like she didn't contribute by any stretch of the imagination. Just from a shooting perspective, she's been better than that over the course of the season. But I think an explainable off shooting night from her for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, that's maybe a good segue, since you're talking about numbers. We'll just go ahead and jump inside the numbers. And Andy, I'll go ahead and start on this one, if that's okay. And I'm going to key in on actually the turnovers you had talked about, which was 18 for Iowa and only 12 for us. Iowa also turns their opponents over, not a whole lot, about 14 a game. But the thing that was, I guess, maybe a bit of a surprise for me is that we ended up with only 14 points off of those 18 turnovers. So we just didn't seem to quite capitalize like sometimes we have in the past. But that was just kind of one number. But, and then Iowa, though, turned our 12 turnovers into 11 points for them. So we ended up almost even on the points off of turnovers, even though we had quite a few less than they do. Than they did. But what do you have in terms of any team stats that you might want to talk about?
Yeah, a big one for me was rebounding. Iowa really got off to a good start on the glass, and I think they were up. I'm trying to find where I had it here. Yeah, they had out-rebounded IU by 10 at halftime, and IU gave up 6 offensive rebounds in the first quarter and 3 the rest of the game. And so I thought, again, as you're trying to slow down a really, really good offensive team, not giving them easy baskets on second chances was really important. So they tightened that part of the game up a lot, and the final rebound margin only ended up being 1. I know rebound margin, not the best stat, better to look at more in terms of rebounding rates, but to be able to rebound from a slow start on the glass and use that as another way to shut things down for Iowa, I thought was really impressive. And talked about Chloe having 9 rebounds. I think Grace had nine rebounds as well. And so getting rebounds from your guards becomes huge in that scenario. So McKenzie only had 6 comparatively, and so I thought that was really important and something they really improved on over the course of the game.
Yeah, and along that lines, I had rebounds down as well. And I actually wrote down, I thought if we're going to key in again on some of the defense that we played on Caitlin Clark, part of it too is her rebounding. She actually leads Iowa in rebounding. She averages right around 8 or 9 rebounds a game, and we held her to 4 rebounds. I don't know if you held people to rebounds, but I thought we did a nice job of keeping her off the glass as well. The other one, though, that was actually a bit of a surprise for me is the points in the paint. Once, Sananu was kind of gone out with her fouls, and we had McKenzie and Grace, especially coming out of halftime, it was clear to me that our game plan was to drive the ball. We still got outscored in the paint 44-36. So I was a little surprised because when I was watching the game, it just didn't feel like that to me. It felt like we were really driving the ball, getting down low. But I was actually surprised that Iowa outscored us in the paint with as much as, with holding Sananu to only 6.
Yeah, I was a little bit too when I saw that, looking at the stats after the game. I do think I think Stolke came in, played really well for Iowa, and not from the free throw line, but from from the field. And
our
so
free throw defense was really good.
Yeah, really, especially on her 0 for 8.
Yes.
But I thought she helped with that, and then when Clark really started to drive the ball a little bit more and was able to get fouled and have some and one opportunities, I thought that was really, I guess, where that went. I mean, realistically, though, if you look at IU, they made 22 2-point shots, if I'm doing the math correctly, and so 36 points in the paint. So there's really only 4 shots that they made outside of the paint, which were probably all I think probably 3 of them Grace Berger mid-range jumpers, and I think one of them was McKenzie Holmes, or maybe 2 were Holmes.
Right.
But so I think they still did an effective job there, but I was a little bit surprised in the aggregate to see it end up that way, because it certainly felt like IU was the aggressor. Maybe that was just not getting as many to fall when they got fouled and just going to the free throw line for 2 shots instead of actually scoring. But but would agree with you there.
Yeah, good. What other team stats kind of stick out to you, or maybe if you want to talk about an individual we haven't talked about so far?
Well, the one number that we should bring up is 13,046, which was the attendance, which set the new attendance
I was
record.
Going there next.
So I guess that's a good one for the program.
Yeah.
I mean, just awesome. I know Ari was texting me some updates there, and as people started getting into the balcony and stuff like that, I think just well deserved, but awesome to see people really rally around this team, and they're so enjoyable to watch. I don't know how you could go to a game and not want to go back. So hopefully you get those people hooked. They come back for the last couple home games of the season there, but crowd really got into it at times. According to somebody on the broadcast, may have been the reason that the shot clock was or that the clock was having issues. I'm like, I feel like we're just making stuff up at that point when they're like, oh, yeah, the crowd, they think the clock might have issues with that.
I've never heard that before. And when
I'm pretty sure that's not how those work. I don't know.
It
but
doesn't.
Anyway, so
No.
if
And
that's
I would
true,
assume,
great, but
I assume they use the same clock they do for the men's game. And we had 17,000 in there. So I don't understand that comment either. So
yeah, I don't know. We got real problems. Stuff's falling from the scoreboard in the men's game when everybody gets loud. This gets loud, the clock stops working. I don't know. We may need some facilities upgrades here at some point, but no. So definitely wanted to hit on that number, and nothing else really from I guess let's talk McKenzie Holmes a little bit. I know we've alluded to her. I guess if we're thinking individuals that we haven't touched on a lot, I mean, she ends up with 24. 10 of 17 from the floor, only 4 of 8 from the free throw line, but thought they found a variety of ways to get her involved. There were some straight post-ups. I thought Iowa did a good job defending some of her moves where she likes to spin back to the middle. I think Caitlin Clark got her on one of those toward the end of the either end of the first quarter or end of the first half, where kind of showed she was ready for her to spin back, but they got her on the move a little bit at times, and really her effectiveness got Zanano in foul trouble, and then they continued to try to go to her, when she was out of the game, and thought IU was even effective when Iowa went to a zone, being able to get the ball inside to Holmes. So that really should be meant to neutralize getting the ball inside, but that did not stop her one bit as she went through. No. So a really good win for her. And they talked on the broadcast a couple of times about how she really just wasn't herself in those matchups last year. And whether she said it or not, you knew that she wanted to come out and have a good game now that she's at full strength. And she certainly did that. Between her and Grace, I think they had 20 of the 23 in the third quarter. And that was really where IU at least started to try to take control of the game.
Yeah, I agree. McKenzie was 24 points tonight. The only unusual thing for her, and I think, again, this is a testament, I think what I was doing on her was fairly effective. She was 10 of 17. So, she had to really work for those 24 as well. Normally she's up in a much higher shooting percentage for herself, but no complaints at all about McKenzie's play at all tonight. She had, only 2 turnovers, which is as much as they were really zeroing in and trying to get that. But on the defensive end, I thought she just, again, I touched on it a little bit. I thought she did a great job with Monica Sananu, and she ended up having 4 steals in the game too. And that was one of my moments I had written down too. Mac just got a steal, and then she's just running out of bounds trying to get that ball, and it was going, and she ends up throwing it off of Sananu's leg, and then we get the ball. And I think it's just those kind of plays that don't show up in the stats that just make this team so much fun. And that was one from McKenzie I thought really stuck out for me. Let's talk maybe a little bit, if you would, about Sydney Parrish. So Sydney, we talked quite a bit of foul trouble tonight. She ended up only playing 21 minutes. In those 21 minutes, she had 9 points, but she also committed 4 turnovers. And so I just thought this game wasn't quite there for Sydney. Again, we can, talk about whether the fouls were fouls or not, but regardless, I just thought that it wasn't the smartest game we've seen from Sydney, and it's not exactly what we've come to expect. But what are your thoughts on Sydney's game tonight?
Yeah, I thought the fouls really seemed to throw her off in the second quarter, because she got off to a good start. She had 5 points in the first quarter, had a big block, and hit a 3, and was able to, kind of get off to a good start. Didn't have any fouls, only had 1 turnover at that point, and I think she got those both her fouls pretty early in the second quarter, and then just seemed like she couldn't really get into much of a rhythm at that point. Only ended up playing 2 minutes in that quarter because she got 2 fouls, 2 turnovers. One of those was kind of doubled up because it was an offensive foul on the screen. So and so then she comes in the third quarter, and I think picked one up relatively early. Did hit a big 3 about the middle of the quarter, I want to say, but pretty early. Got her third foul. I thought that was one of the fouls against Clark where I was like, I didn't really know what she did in some of these cases. And, so I just felt like she never got into a rhythm. I mean, she did play 8 minutes in that quarter, but I think was playing a lot of it trying not to foul, pick up a 4th foul because Garzone had gotten in foul trouble. And I think they were trying to ride it out with her. So I thought it was just more of a rhythm thing than anything with her. And then was really just a complimentary player there as she played in the fourth quarter, and they kind of went back and forth. And she got her 4th early. They put Garzone back in with 4 pretty early in the quarter, in the fourth quarter, and they just kind of tag teamed it to get through to the end of the game. But I agree. Not necessarily the performance that you'd look for from her, but I thought it was more the whistles that totally took her out of what she normally wanted to do.
Yeah, I think that was that's a good point. And then, so we had Garzon ended up only playing 24 minutes as well, which meant we had to bring in some of our bench players. We've already talked about Sarah, but we also had Hannah Sandvik came in, and she gave us 5 minutes. And I thought those minutes were fine. In fact, I thought towards the end, when she was playing, she got that great steal. I didn't write how much time there was, around 2 minutes or so left, and Iowa fouled her. Unfortunately, she missed both her free throws, but I thought that was an important steal that she ended up getting, even though it looks like she didn't even get credit for it. But I thought Hannah came in and gave us a good 5 minutes off the bench, as did Lily Meister. But those are the main contributors, those 3 off of our bench. But any thoughts in general on our bench play tonight?
Yeah, I thought Sandvik stepped in, and they really didn't have a lot of other places to turn at that point with both of them in foul trouble. And I think if the game's close, you probably don't risk Parrish or Garzone getting a third. So gave her some minutes, and she didn't take any shots, but I thought was, played hard, was a net, a net positive being out there. You're not looking for her to score. You're just looking for her to get in there, defend, move the ball. And I thought she did a good job of that for somebody being thrust into a difficult situation at that stage. And I think, Lily Meister got a nice offensive rebound when she was in, made one of her 2 free throws there down
Good
the stretch.
rebound.
And so I thought that was that was good. They're up 9 at that point. I think her free throw put them up 10. So was able to, and they were able to steal some rest from McKenzie at that point. She was in foul trouble as well, but also played pretty much the whole first half. So it was a good chance to get her a little bit of rest, and thought she acquitted herself, just fine. I thought they kind of went to her when Zanano was out, so they could not put her in a situation to have to defend her. And so I thought that was just, smart coaching from Coach Moore, and then a good chance to get her some experience.
Yep, absolutely. So I don't have any other numbers per se right now. Do you have anything else you want to touch on in terms of numbers?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, with that, we will just go ahead and jump into our game ball. So if you're watching live in our YouTube, you can see at the bottom of our screen, we have a scrolling ticker with all of the game balls we've had. So far this year, we've had 13 for McKenzie Holmes, 3 for Sydney Parrish and Yarden Garzon, 2 for Grace Berger, 1 each for Sarah Scalia and Chloe Moore McNeil. So Andy, as our guest on our show tonight, I'll let you go first. Who gets your game ball for tonight?
I got to go with Grace Berger. I thought, as much as she led the team in scoring, so that's it may be an easy answer in that regard. But I just thought her ability to really control the flow of the game was so important for IU, and hit big shots every time they needed one. Really took over, particularly in the second half. If I look at, trying to see here, the second half, she scored 19 of those 26 in the second half. So took 14 shots. I thought was smartly aggressive, though. I didn't feel like she forced shots. I thought she knew what the team needed, got the ball in the spots where she's able to score and really be effective, and was just an awesome floor leader out there. So to me, it was her. Not nothing wrong with going with McKenzie, but I just thought the way that Grace, with the ball in her hands, controlled things was so huge for IU.
Yeah, I'm going to second that. I think this was one of the actually surprisingly easier game balls for me to think about. And you would look at the box score and you think McKenzie again for her 14th, but I think Grace had just the all around great game from beginning to end in terms of both ends of the floor. She almost ended up with the double. She was 1 point away from that, or excuse me, 1 rebound away from that, only had 1 turnover. She played almost the entire game, 39 minutes. And like you said, she was 26 points, and most of that you could tell, 12 of them, I think, in just the third quarter alone. You could tell coming out of this, the halftime, I thought she just was like, okay, I'm going to put this team on my back. Maybe I'm not shooting my mid-range as well as I normally do. I'm not making my shots. I'm going to just drive the ball. And I'm sure the coaches coached her through that as well. But it shows her maturity and her poise and willingness to switch her game plan up, because it's not necessarily always, what we would see from Grace. And I just thought, again, her poise really came out and helped this team again. And, the coaches are always talking about the maturity. I think she leads the way in that category. And I think the rest of the team kind of follows her lead. So for me, I think Grace gets the game ball as well. So that makes the third one for Grace this year. So with that, Andy, let's switch over to the Hoosier Hustle Award. And again, our Hoosier Hustle Award, we've had quite a few this year. So Sydney Parrish right now leads the way with 7, Chloe Moore McNeil with 4.5, Grace Berger with 3, Lily Meister 2.5, Lexi Bargasser with 2, and then 1 each for Alyssa Geary, Garzon, and Caitlin Peterson. But I think this one is an interesting one, Andy. You could definitely go, I think, a couple different routes, but which way do you want to go with yours?
I'm going to go with Chloe Moore McNeil. Probably not too often you guard somebody who scores 35 points. You're like, man, you played great defense. But that, for me, is what this was about. I thought she really made things difficult on Caitlin Clark. And in addition to that, as we talked before, got 9 rebounds, had 3 assists. But I just thought played her butt off against Clark to really make her earn everything she got. And again, held her to 12 of 28 shooting. She got to the line 11 times, 3 of 11 from 3, and she hit 2 of those threes really, really early in the game.
Yeah. Yep.
and had won from there on out for the rest. So I just thought she really made her work for it. And if this is, we run into this sometimes in the assembly call where it's like, well, doesn't necessarily have to be like if you were second place for the game ball, which would easily be McKenzie Holmes to me. To me, I think there's something to be said. I think if you look at hustle, I think Chloe Moore McNeil is right there as a definition of that, the way she played tonight.
Yeah, I actually am going to agree with that. I do want to talk a little bit. I thought, in the first half, Sarah Scalio really gave us some good minutes in that first half. But I think Chloe Moore McNeil from beginning to end really just gave us some great points. She ended up playing almost the entire game, 37 points. And she only had 3 fouls, which again, with as much defense as she was expected to play on Caitlin Clark, and as many times that Caitlin Clark was getting to the line, it wasn't from Chloe Moore McNeil fouling her. So the only blemish we could talk about is her 1 of 8 field goals, but to your point earlier, she was expending a lot of energy on that defensive end of the floor. So I think we give her some grace with that. And she almost ended up with a double as well. 11 points and almost all from the free throw line, but she had 9 rebounds too. And they were all defensive rebounds. And I think all 8 of those were really important, especially with as many times as, Iowa was actually getting the ball back and getting second chance points, right? They got us on the second chance points with 11 to only 4 for us. So those 8 defensive rebounds I thought were very important from Chloe as well. So I actually had her written down for my game ball as well. So Andy, with that, that kind of leads us then to our lingering questions, which I know you were on here with Jeff before after the Ohio State game. And again, it's hard to come up with lingering questions for a team that has only lost 1 game. But, we're getting ready to play Ohio State again, which we'll preview here in a little bit. But do you have any lingering questions that's on the top of your mind after tonight's game with Iowa?
I think I guess the only thing you can think of is, do you have a little bit of a hangover from this game? I think this team has kind of proven over the course of the season that seems pretty unlikely. But I guess if there was going to be one, and I know we've talked about this a lot with, we talked about this after the Purdue win for the men's team, can they back it up with another big win? And so this team has routinely done that over the course of the season. So I don't know that it's anything anybody's too worried about, but also was a fast-paced game, expended a lot of energy. But I think you've got it's not till Monday, right? Monday. That the game is. So you got a little bit of a break to regroup from that. It's another home game, which helps as well. And so I feel like I know what the answer to that question is, but I guess if there was one, how do you come back from this and stay focused? And because now you've got the smallest amount of breathing room at the top of the standings, and if you're able to go through and play well in these next few games, you find a way to win at Ohio State. Then you got 2 home games coming back. I think I said that wrong a minute ago. You got 2 home games after that before you close out at Iowa. I think what you want is to ideally not have that Iowa game mean a whole lot at the end, and then you're kind of just playing with house money at that point. So I think that's really where this game comes up as a big one is, if you're able to go on the road, beat Ohio State, who's been struggling of late, if you're able to do that, you really got all the momentum in the world coming down the stretch. So it's really just, can you take this on the road in a tough environment against a team that's desperate and keep things rolling?
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't really have any lingering questions outside of that either. I mean, we've got 4 games left to finish the season here. So yes, we will talk in more detail about our matchup or rematch with Ohio State here in a minute. So we have them on Monday, and then we come back home to face Michigan, another ranked opponent, currently ranked 12th. And then we have Purdue coming into town on Sunday, the 19th, which I'm hearing our ticket sales are quite high for that too. So if you are around on the 19th, I think in particular, Grace Berger has earned your attendance, hopefully, in this game. It's senior night for our women. So just a plug there to go out and get yourself a ticket and get to that game. And then we, like you mentioned, we end up facing Iowa again, but this time on the road on February 26th, which is a Sunday. So I think that you're right. Can we continue to stay focused? We're really coming into the last stretch of our season here, and we have a a game and a half lead. So we now have a cushion, but Iowa's schedule is a little bit easier than ours. And, right now they're still right behind us in those standings. And, don't count out Maryland either. They're 2.5 games back, and we just can't afford with any of these 4 games really to stub our toe. So I think it's important to do what Coach Moore always preaches. Dwell on this, enjoy the win. It was a phenomenal win. I don't want to discount it because it was an amazing win and important for our team this year and important for our program and its history overall. But take it 24 hours, enjoy it, and then we got to move on to Ohio State, because even though Ohio State may be reeling, they still have some talent on that team, and we're now going into their house. So I think for me, that's the same lingering question. I don't have any others with this team other than to just continue seeing the maturity and the poise game after game has been a ton of fun. Anything else with that, or do you want to start talking about Ohio State and then we can give our final thoughts?
No, I think we're good. I think most of the things that you saw tonight that were potential negatives in terms of the foul trouble just hasn't been something this team has done on a consistent basis. So to me, that doesn't quite fit the bill for a lingering question. So I think we're good to talk a little bit of OSU.
All right. So with that, we do have a rematch coming up with Ohio State. They are currently ranked 13th. That game is on Monday, February 13th. It tips off at 7 o'clock Eastern or 6 o'clock Central. It will be once again aired on Big Ten Network. In terms of history, IU is 23-58 all time, which is including an away record in Columbus of only 7-37. So historically, Ohio State has definitely had our number, and especially in Columbus. However, we won that last matchup earlier this season, back in Bloomington, 78-65. For those of you who watched it or might have missed it, it was really on the back of that, third quarter, I think in particular, where we held Ohio State to only 6 points. So in terms of Ohio State, they are currently 21-4 overall and 9-4 in the conference. Their most recent game was yesterday when they beat Minnesota at home 63-93. And just as a side note, all 4 of their losses have actually came in conference play, and almost all 4 back-to-back. So that it was just a kind of an interesting stretch here. I think Ohio State rather is something like, they've lost, I think they're 4 of their last 6 or something like that. They lost 2 in a row, won 1, lost another one, and then won again. So I think that if I did my math right. Andy, do you want to talk about their stats, or do you want me to keep going?
I mean, you can keep going if you want. Yeah. I think I know they've had an injury, and I think the notes here say that this person was back. I was trying to look back at the box.
Sheldon. Yeah,
I was trying to look at the box score. I don't see her in the box score from the game.
She didn't play in Minnesota? Okay.
But I'm not 100% sure, so I can kind of look back if you want to keep going.
Yeah, that'd be good. So as a team, they are averaging right around 83 points per game, but they only give up 66 points per game. That definitely is early on. If you watched Ohio State, their calling card is really that press that they have of theirs, and they've really given some teams some fits. They're not a strong rebounding team. They get out-rebounded by about one rebound margin. In terms of shooting, offensively, 47% field goal percentage and 33% from 3. But again, they're holding their opponents to only 41% field goals and only 28% from the 3-point line. In turnovers, they are forcing a very large 22 turnovers per game, but they only commit around 14. So they definitely have their calling card again as a team that likes to turn their opponents over while really a bit taking care of the ball a little bit more. And they're also really good at sharing the ball, averaging right around 18 assists per game. Okay, so they have 6 players averaging double figures. So Taylor Mikesell leads them with 17.6 points per game. JC Sheldon came back. Have you found out, Andy, did she play in that Minnesota game?
Looks like she played in the game before that against Maryland, and then might have just rested her against Minnesota. Since it just kind of, I'm reading it, I'm trying to skim through this article, but it seemed like she was out for a while, so got a little bit to get back to full strength. So they may have just rested her in that Minnesota game. So I would assume, unless she had a setback, which I didn't see anything about, that she could probably play at least some in the IU game, which gives them a big lift and another potential offensive option.
Yeah. So that's important for Ohio State because prior to her injury, she was averaging right around 14 points per game. So getting her back and into the swing, and plus, she's got some great leadership as a more veteran player, I think will be important for them. Their third leading scorer is Taylor Theory. She averages right around 14 points per game. She also leads the team in rebounding at 7 points per game. And their coach is Kevin McGruff. He's been there since 2014. But what do you remember? I think you did that post game with Jeff, right? What do you remember from that Ohio State game that you want to talk about?
I actually did the Michigan game with him, which I think was either right before or right after it, I believe.
It was right before, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that was a game that I did watch it. I think I just couldn't come on. And, it was a game that IU kind of controlled for the most part, if I'm remembering it correctly. Never really blew them out of the water, but I don't feel like was ever really, really challenged as best I can recall. So, I think, if she's back, that certainly makes it a little bit different game. But they've still struggled lately. Maryland's a really good team, obviously, but they got blown out there, came back to blow out, a Minnesota team that's struggling. So, there's certainly talent there. They're really trying to right the ship. They got off to such a good start and have been reeling a little bit lately. So again, you're going into a place where, they're somewhat desperate for a win and playing at home against a really highly ranked team. So it'll be a tough environment for IU as they go through. But I think one they'll be ready for sure. But as you said, that was the game that just kind of basically played pretty even, except for the third quarter when they took it to them. I think looks like it was 36-32 Ohio State at halftime. Then IU outscores them 27-6. So Ohio State outscored IU in total for the other three quarters. It was just that IU played that well in that particular quarter. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Cody McMahon was the one that led them in scoring, although I think she fouled out of that game. It looks, that's right. She had 21 in that game. So, just a lot of talented young players in the Big Ten. She's one of those as well. So we'll see how IU can do. But always good to have already know that you can beat a team going into it, and try to be able to do that, and knowing that you got those two home games coming up after that gives a little bit of extra motivation to say, hey, let's get over the hump with this one. Then we go home for two, right? And can hopefully take things down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. So I don't have anything else on Ohio State. So let me talk programming notes. And so for those of you who don't know, Jeff Marlowe is keeping us up to date for all of our Hoosier alumni who are playing in the professional ranks. You can find those updates on our private community, or you can find them on our Twitter feed. If you don't already, you can find us on Twitter by just searching for Doing the Work with spaces in between everything, and follow us there. And you can find Jeff's updates there as well. Assembly Call Radio, I think, is officially canceled for tonight. They will be on Saturday after the men's game. So they will be back. And then we also are part of the Back Home Network with Crimson Cast. So if you don't subscribe to them, give them a listen. Amanda Foster over there is doing a women's podcast is on Tuesdays, giving a different viewpoint there. So that's a good listen as well. As for our Doing the Work show, our next show is going to be after the Ohio State game on Monday. Again, that tip time is at 7:00 Eastern. So and 6:00 Central. So we will go on live right after that. So hopefully we will see you all again there. All right. And Andy, I think with that, we'll just wrap it up here with last call. So what kind of thoughts do you want to leave us with tonight?
Just so excited that people are getting behind this team as much as they are. You guys have started doing the show here within these last couple of seasons. And I think that speaks to the excitement that there is for the program. And it's awesome to see that many people be there at the game to take it in. And like I said, I'm hard pressed to find somebody who would watch this team and even this game in general, which is, kind of like I said at the top, just a really competitive game between two really good teams. I'd be hard pressed to find somebody who you take to watch them play and be like, hey, that's a team that I don't want to go watch again. That just doesn't make sense to me. So hopefully, for these last 2 home games that they've got after the Ohio State game, some huge crowds will be there to cheer them on as they hopefully win the Big Ten. And your stars have to be stars in some of these games. We say that on the assembly call a lot. Same is true here. Stars of this team are Grace Berger and McKenzie Holmes. They showed up big time tonight, particularly in the second half. And so, kudos to them. Chloe Moore McNeil, we talked a lot about the defense on Caitlin Clark, who's a just outstanding player, outstanding shooter, passer, and just made her night as rough as you could possibly make it for her. So just an exciting win. They continue to stack these wins, and always fun to get on here. It lets me take notes during things, so I maybe get maybe a little bit less emotionally invested in the game, which is probably for the best. But always happy to come on with you guys. And if the team wasn't so darn good, I would take credit for them being 2-0 when I've been on. But when they only lose one game, you really can't pat yourself on the back too much for that. So I won't.
No, we have a lot of lucky shirts going on in my house this year. That's for sure.
Yeah, they're pretty much all lucky. As long as you burned whatever you ordered in the Michigan State game, you feel pretty good.
I can't even remember. So whatever bad luck was on that, I think I've washed it out by now. So that's good. Yeah, I agree with all that, Andy. And I want to go back again to that number, 13,046. That was a record-setting crowd for us tonight for our women's team, and not just in regular season game. And I think that's important to note. So we beat the WNIT record when we held the championship WNIT team there. And, that was just over 13,000. And we beat that tonight. And so a huge thanks to all of our fans for coming out, and especially an early tip time on a Thursday, school night, work night, whatever it is. And they still showed up, and they were loud, and they were impactful. And I thought, that rattled Iowa at times as well. And Iowa's a veteran team. All 5 of their starters are back from last year. So it's not like this is new for Iowa, or they're playing with a mix of veterans and young player, although they did have the gal off the bench as a freshman. But again, just kudos to all of our fans who have showed up, the ones that are here with us tonight. Jeff and I obviously appreciate it, coming in and listening to us talk with each other about our Indiana women's basketball team. And it's contagious, Andy. To your point, I've even, rubbed off a little bit. I have an Iowa State friend, and she was watching the game and texted me about it. And she's, asking me some questions about Caitlin Clark and about some of my team, and becomes infectious. And I think it's important for people to understand that and to give them a chance, right? Like, even though maybe historically our women's program hasn't been there like you would expect because of our men's side, we don't have any banners yet other than our WNIT. But I think it's important to support what they're doing because it's historical. And even though they're not getting the national attention, we're really starting to see it, I think, ramp up from our fan base. And I'm very excited to see what we're going to do in our last 2 games, especially in that last Purdue game when we host the Boilermakers at home. So I'm hoping, that balcony can get even more full than it was tonight. So for me, just thanks to all the fans that have been out there supporting our team, and the ones that are, jumping on and coming along with us for this ride, because it's been a lot of fun, and just even more fun when we can have friends together. So, well, with that, I will wrap us up here. If you do want to see us do our show live and be part of our live chat, where we had well over 100 people in our chat tonight. So thanks to everyone who showed up, but make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. You can also be part of our private community. You can go out to assemblycall.com/community and find out how to join there. We have all kinds of fun, different conversations and polls and different things that we do in the community. So that's a lot of fun. Special thanks to John Rigger of Riggs Design for designing our new logo that you see. Also, a big thanks to Bob Thompson for our music that you've heard a couple of times throughout here. And most of all, thank you to all of you who are listening live or later on in whatever podcast feed you like to listen to. Without you, it just wouldn't be quite as fun. But most of all, thanks to Andy for coming on as well, for filling in for me. I appreciate that. So we'll be back with you to talk Indiana women's hoops on Monday night. But until then, keep your elbows in, your eyes on the rim, and let's go Hoosiers. All right. Well, thanks, Andy. Really appreciate you coming on.
So. Anytime. Glad I could do it. Thursday nights and night. No, that I don't have a practice to run, so worked out
wonderful. Well, good deal. So Thanks to everybody in the chat too as well. I think I'll go ahead and sign us off here. So good night, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kathy.